I'm Joel Webster and welcome to the 5th episode of TRCP's Native Trout Adventures. With me today are Jim Martin, retired Chief of Fisheries for Oregon Department of Fish and Wildlife, and he's on the TRCP board. And Dwayne Meadows works for Trout Unlimited Alaska on the Bristol Bay campaign. We are just a few miles from the ocean in the Coast Range of Oregon, searching for coastal cutthroat trout. This place is very different from the other areas we've been fishing. Lush undergrowth, big trees, thick vegetation. The color of the water is even different. Nice, Jim.
He's got some shoulders.
Coastal cutthroat trout, also known as harvest trout and blueback trout, are the only subspecies of cutthroat that spend time in the ocean.
Holy cow, look at that. Isn't he lovely? Look at the spotting and the fins.
It's a beautiful fish.
That guy went to sea last spring and spent the summer on the continental shelf. These fish actually came into the estuaries in July and in August to avoid the predation of the giant salmon runs. So their life history is to not go on big seaward migrations like salmon and steelhead. They just go under the shelf and feed, come into the estuaries, run up the rivers, go back to sea in spring, spend the summer on the shelf, come into the estuaries. It's a very unique life history, unlike any other salmonid. They're really creatures of the small streams. Very, very unique, and therefore they need very, very unique protection for the headwaters of their streams because they're highly vulnerable to too much sediment, too much warmth. They're an extremely unique salmonid.
That's Oregon coastal cutthroat fishing. See you later, little lady. Good looking fish. That's what it's about, Joel.
We've been walking up this creek, fishing it for hours. We haven't seen another person. Fishing's been great. This water is absolutely amazing. I mean, it doesn't get any better than this.
Oh, there he is. Nice trout. Beauty.
Get that.
Nice
Coastal
fish.
cutthroat right there.
That's a sea run.
That's awesome. There you go, Jim. Is that a nice one?
Little rainbow. Here's a little rainbow trout. They are native to the system, both native resident rainbow as well as juvenile steelhead that will migrate to sea, spend a couple years in the ocean, and come back as 10 to 14 pound fish. And even though this country has lots of salmonids, rainbows, cutthroats, silver salmon, king salmon, chums, they divide up the habitat, the freshwater habitat. They each have special little areas so that it minimizes the interspecific competition for food supply and space. So these riparian areas need to be protected from logging, but the headwaters also need to be protected from inappropriate roading, because the biggest danger to most of these streams' hydrography is inappropriate roading and massive landsliding. Too much sedimentation, way more sedimentation than the historical disturbance regimes really contributed. A lot of times they don't look like they're that big of a deal. They're a little tiny creek. Well, we can just go ahead and log here. We've got other little tiny creeks. But cumulatively, degradation rolls downstream. And once you degrade a stream, it takes centuries to build it back up.
Right now, there are a number of bills in the U.S. Congress that could have major impacts on fish and wildlife and hunting and fishing. One of those is the so-called Roadless and Wilderness Release Act that would open up the nation's finest backcountry fish and wildlife habitat for potential development. If passed, this bill could result in fewer hunting and fishing opportunities and a diminished outdoor experience. Well, this has been absolutely amazing. I mean, we've hiked about a mile up from the truck, and it's just been one outstanding hole after another. I just can't get over how great this fishing's been, and thanks so much for taking me out today and showing me this wonderful water. There you go.
Slippery.
Sportsmen need to make their voice heard. Speak up today and ask your representative and senators to oppose the so-called Roadless and Wilderness Release Act. Let them know that this legislation is bad for hunting and fishing. Go to www.trcp.org and get involved today.